Olufemi Boyede, please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lady K. And on behalf of the world's best team, I welcome everybody here today. And usually in Nigeria, with the very favorable weather, Saturdays are for Owambes and I think Parapo meetings all over the place. So for you to step out of those not just comfort but enjoyment zones, it just shows how serious and committed you are. So I say welcome. For those who are joining this program for the first time, very coincidentally, June 2024 makes it exactly 2 years since we launched this global platform to talk about international trade and to highlight issues, challenges, trends, developments, where there are challenges to profile recommendations and try to educate, sensitize, all combined with the objective of making international trade easier, smoother, and more profitable to all practitioners. To the glory of God, He has blessed me with the world's best team, and I appreciate them. And just like Lady K said, there are some of you who have religiously stuck with this program and have attended everyone. Very soon we'll be launching an awards program where we actually recognize and give you virtual gold medals. So on that note, I believe that we are good to start. Um, Lady K will be introducing the speakers as they come on, but I believe that today will be more engaging probably than a few recent ones. Why? Because the topic affects just about everybody, whether you are in business or you are not, whether you are a nano enterprise or a mega corporation, the policies that and the practices that have been happening, especially in the Nigerian business space, give a lot to talk about. And just like you can see, we are live streaming, and those who are not even on the webinar because they are not on Zoom will join. We do produce a flip book that we share with all the relevant authorities and stakeholders across the globe. So whatever comments you are making, please make them constructive. And even when you are lamenting about a particular difficulty, I encourage you to please make a suggestion as to how this can be resolved. On this note, I will say once again, welcome everybody and do have a great time today.
Yeah, so if you want to know more about him, you can go to talkingtradeglobal.com, talkingtradeglobal.com, but I just where to advertise. She's Oyedolapo is a neat legal service, is into Cora and founder, Monster Red. Please, you have to pronounce it. I don't know if I got it pronounced.
Yeah,
How do you pronounce that?
actually mustard, just like the mustard seed.
Mustard. Oh, okay, that's very good. So he has a diverse professional background, has been leading legal services at Cora since January 2023. So Femi Boyede, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I'm just going to try to bring up, I hope everybody will be able to see my screen. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. You might wonder why we chose the topic Naira economics. Those who went to Harvard and other business schools, they have read economics and everything, and then suddenly you see the title Naira economics. And it's just our own way. Just a minute. So Naira economics is our own coinage. We coined that as we aimed to explore Nigeria's unique economic dynamics, highlighting how local policies and realities often diverge from globally established economic theories and influencing everything from the cashless initiatives to daily business operations. For emphasis, the unique economic behaviors and policies in Nigeria that sometimes contradict globally studied and established economic theories form the fulcrum for the choice of today's theme. And as an illustration, a lot of consumers in Nigeria have recently been complaining about using Naira to buy Naira, even in Nigeria. And then you wonder, how does this tally with any economic theory anywhere? Most advanced countries had gone cashless even before we pronounced the concept of cashless economy in Nigeria. And when it says cashless, it only means that you are encouraged to walk to or drive to an ATM machine, insert your card, and withdraw just the minimal cash that you need at that time. For groceries and even bigger purchases, you go into a grocery store or a supermarket, and after you've picked the things you want to buy, you walk up to the teller, you give them your card, they insert it into the machine, POS machine, and then you pay the exact total of your goods. Today, in the guise of cashless economy, a Nigerian goes to the filling station and then his tank is filled up. He wants to pay. The station manager walks up to him and says, sorry, our POS is not working, but there is this man or woman here. You can take your money from them. So imagine you bought fuel for 30,000, 40,000 Naira, and then you are compelled to buy 40,000 Naira from that person who is standing right there in the filling station. They charge you like 800 Naira or 1,000 Naira, give you 40,000, you hand over to the station attendant, and then you move on. Technically, you have just bought Naira with Naira. The other one that looks like people are not even conscious of it, the money you just withdrew from the POS machine is actually your money deposited in a bank. And for using that POS machine, the bank still charges you because you have conducted a transaction. So your account is debited by the bank, not to the face value of what you purchased, but a service charge is placed on what you withdrew from the POS operator, to whom you have paid an extra 1,000 Naira. To us at Talking Trade and Investment Global, this looks like this can only happen under Naira economics. So like I said, is part of the reason why we chose this theme, so that practitioners and players in the marketplace here can actually talk about this. And please, as we talk about it, while we share our experiences, our difficulties and challenges, we will encourage that you come up with what solutions we can take to government and the policy makers to seek, first and foremost, to understand how this is affecting the business environment and the average consumer. Lest I forget, about a few days ago, I went to Giri. Giri is a little village around Abuja to buy yam. And exactly the scenario I painted just now at the filling station is what occurred. So in about 10, maybe a stretch of 12 batches, some selling yam, some Irish potato, some beans, some pepper and what have you, one person is smart enough to have obtained a POS machine. So because I can't get money at the ATM machine, and it's so difficult and challenging for me to make a transfer to the seller's account, I am then compelled to pay, I think it was 400 or 500 Naira to that other person who is actually, in their own understanding, assisting me as if they are actually doing me a favor to be able to pay and take my yams away. So we are actually interrogating, has the purpose of the POS been met? Just like I said, the effectiveness of the cashless system has been undermined as banks struggle to meet customers' cash needs, leading to high reliance on POS operators who, like we said, charge exorbitant fees. So there are other daily economic challenges. I'm sure whether you live in Lagos or you live in Abuja or you live in Kaduna or Kano, you do go to the local market. Apart from the money that you pay directly for service, maybe the wheelbarrow pusher, you pay them, the alabaru, or what do they call them, you pay them. You will not believe that these nano enterprises that are actually just doing everything to survive, you won't believe the number of tickets that they pay every day. So somebody who goes to the market with goods worth maybe a total of 10,000 Naira, that's what she's hoping to make in sales on that day, ends up paying to the market association, to there is the market management, there is the goods, the particular product that person is selling, whether it is pepper or palm oil, they also pay a separate fee for selling that in the same market that they are paying the local government a monthly rent for the space allocated to them. It happens with the wheelbarrow pushers, it happens with the Okada riders. They face numerous daily fees, levies, charges, taxes that make it difficult for them to stay financially afloat. Let's go to rideshare drivers, Uber, Bolt, and I think there's one they call Rider now. All these people, the app owners, they don't own the vehicle. They don't participate in the wear and tear. They don't fuel the vehicle. They don't pay the person driving the vehicle. The maintenance of the vehicle is the responsibility of the owner, who is, to all intent and purposes, providing a service in the hope of making a living. You will be astonished to see that the app owners actually take as high as 40% of what the rider pays. So you take a ride, for example, that is 2,000 Naira. The driver is lucky if what gets into his account at the end of the day is up to 1,200. And then on the macro level, we have also looked at the tax burdens. It's a good thing that recently, please, my good is in quotes, it's good that recently the Nigerian government is able to report a skyrocketing increase in internally generated revenue based on the expansion of the tax net in Nigeria. But I compare this, for example, to an experience I had in India in 2007. I bought airtime of I think it was 1,000 rupees. And by the time I loaded it onto my phone, effectively, I got airtime worth 750 rupees. And when I asked the operator, the shop where I bought it from, he explained very clearly, yes, this is how it happens here in India. We have discriminatory taxation where the people who can afford big money are taxed in order to relieve the burden on those who cannot afford. So if you buy 200 rupees recharge, you get 200 rupees airtime. But if you come and ask for the larger denomination, you get lesser airtime. But here, it looks like, I do hope that they get it right finally. It looks like everybody is subjected to taxation. Businesses are stifling. Most manufacturers sink their own boreholes. They generate their own power. They make the road, either they construct or they improve the road that leads to their manufacturing premises, and 1,000 other things that that make the business to flourish. And at the end of the day, you go there. I think recently a lot of you must have seen a video clip that went viral about a hospital that was charged 25 million Naira for energy consumption because they said they are in band A. And I can assure you from my experience here, most hospitals also run on, what do they call them now? It's NEPA that everybody knows. NEPA is actually the standby. Generator is the main source of fuel. Diesel prices are not friendly and what have you, but corporate taxes, because we need to increase internally generated revenue. So these for us are the reasons. They present a reason for discussion, and we are saying that there's a need for government to consider the cumulative impact of these multiple taxes, charges, levies, and fees on businesses, and to develop more sustainable, business-friendly economic policies. So I just use these slides to kickstart the discussion. It is my fervent hope that at the end of today, we will have a few suggestions and recommendations on this, my last charge, that government should introduce more sustainable, business-friendly economic policies. Hopefully, we get 1, 2, or 3 from our speakers and our participants today. I thank you all very much.
That's fine. Thank you. All right. Yes, my name is Oyindolakbo Olushesi. I work at Scorape as a legal advisor there. I also run Mustard. essentially my interest in fintech policy, and just general startup ecosystem, right? But most especially, examining payment regulations, policies, data protection and privacy regulations, legislations across different parts of Africa, right? And I've done a bit of work in that space as well. Thank you so much for having me this evening.
Your
Okay,
presentation,
thank you.
sir. Go ahead.
All right. Okay, so I'll just speak to some of the things that you have mentioned. I think that they are very important things, and obviously like very serious things that affect a lot of businesses in the space. And I think that one of the issues with these things is usually the micro and small businesses who cannot afford to hire expensive tax consultants or legal advisors or generally consultants to help them structure their businesses in ways that they can legally avoid taxes, as against the more established businesses who can afford to have these expensive consultants on their payroll. So what you see is that they bear the brunt of these things mostly. And ultimately, what happens is you then find that this comes down to the end user or the final consumers on the streets who then have to pay for the extra fees or charges that these guys face. I remember very recently when the cybersecurity levy was introduced, and then there was a lot of noise around how that would potentially impact transaction fees, and then who would be the ultimate bearer of this burden. So by virtue of my profession as a lawyer, advising startups and working on financial transactions as well, you figure that what happens is most times the person that is paying, sorry, the party that is going to receive payments for a transaction or who would need to bear the cost of some charges would transfer it to the other person, to the other party, because you want to make sure that your money is received in full, right? And which is why you see that sometimes when negotiations are going on, parties would sometimes even contend that they want the fees to be VAT inclusive, which means that you as a seller or as a service provider would need to figure out how to calculate your 7.5% that you need to remit to the government, right? So obviously for the 0.05% charge that the cybersecurity levy would have cost before it was suspended, what would have happened was that you would have seen this kind of arrangement as well, which would then mean that the final consumer might have had to bear the brunt. So it's unfortunate. And again, particularly to the issue on cashless transactions. I think that today Norway has the highest cashless transactions in the world, and 100% of the people in Norway have bank accounts. And I think only about 2% of their transactions are done via cash. In Nigeria, the story is different. I spent the major part of 2019 in Enugu, issues or Agbani area. And you find that in these places, you don't find banks at all. So people had to rely a lot on POS agents. People had to rely a lot on POS agents, and POS agents sometimes would need to travel very far to go and get access to this cash. And very recently, I was just observing, because one of the things that I do as an industry enthusiast as well is to just look at some of these things and see how they affect the common man at the end of the day. One of the things that I observed recently, I was discussing with a colleague, is you find that sometimes it seems like ATMs are deliberately not funded, right? It seems so. I don't know that that is the case, but it seems that ATMs are deliberately not funded. And then sometimes you even find, very interestingly, or rather surprisingly coincidentally, you find multiple POS agents directly in front of banks, or in front of bank ATM terminals. And then when you go to the ATM terminals, the ATMs don't have cash in them, right? But the POS agents have cash in them, which is also one of the practices that we're finding in the fuel area these days, where you find filling stations say they don't have fuel, but you find a lot of black market sellers right in front of them with heavy 50-liter jerry cans filled with fuel, right? So which then usually raises the question that, is it a deliberate attempt to just inflate these prices or what, right? But you cannot but question first whether it even makes sense to have POS agents where you have to pay. I mean, I know that the argument is usually that these people had to go and look for it. So what you're doing is you're paying them for their service and not necessarily that you're buying the cash. But if you think about the business model at the end of the day, it is that they also remit, these two, because before you have an agent aggregator, super agent, or an MMO, and then the actual financial institution that is providing the service. So and then they remit this money back to the guys who then settle them at the end of the day. So it is not a paying you for your service, it's actually payment to get access to the cash. There's also the argument that they without them, you will have to travel far to go to the bank. Sometimes you have to take a cab or something to pay for cab to go to the bank to go and withdraw the cash. And the very simple response to that is just to make ATMs available, right? There is actually a CBN regulation that says that your ATM should not be out of cash for a particular period of time. And I think the timeline is about 48 hours or thereabout. But what you find is that you go to some ATM points and they don't have cash for days, weeks, sometimes even months. And then you see that poses a significant challenge to our quest for cashless transaction. Just yesterday, I was almost embarrassed when I went to the filling station and I wanted to buy fuel. I'd forgotten my ATM card in the car. So sorry, I've forgotten my ATM card in the house. So I got to the filling station and I said, okay, I have my phone here. So let me I never carry cash, by the way. And I know that I have to suffer for it most of the times, but that is why I have multiple cards and my phone. So at least as failover plans. But yesterday, I won't mention the name of the banks, but like 3 different banks were not working. The transfer points were not working, like 3 of them. And I also tried the card. I also tried to use my card, but guess what? The POS terminal wasn't working. So even if I had my card, I couldn't use the card because the POS terminal wasn't working. But then I needed to use my bank my bank app, and then that wasn't working as well. So these are some of the challenges at the infrastructure level. There's a lot of challenges that still needs to be dealt with. I acknowledge that the CBN is doing a lot of work in that respect, but at the end of the day, people suffer for this. And there's a dark side to the proliferation of POS agents that we also need to look at, which is that sometimes bad actors use these guys. So I've had people who, I think my father as well has had this experience where because he's not exactly a literate man. So he thought the guy was trying to help him because the card wasn't working. So he said, oh, okay, thank you. Please let me check. The guy said he could help me check it. So let me check it. And then the guy swaps the card, right? And then cuts away with the card. By the time he realized, he looked for him, he couldn't find him. All he was just getting was debit alerts. But because these debit alerts were happening at a POS agent point, there was no way the camera that would have picked the person if the person had used an ATM was not available. So that was obviously like a security consideration as well. And then you also have, sometimes you hear stories about some bad law enforcement agents, some bad some fraudsters, scammers using these terminals as well, because the security that an ATM point would provide is also eroded with using this. But that is on the security end. On the actual transaction bit, it is the final consumer, the last mile that eventually suffers for this. And obviously something needs to be done, especially on the infrastructure level. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your contributions.
I can see some questions here. I don't know if they're directed at me. Some questions in the chat.
The questions are directed at both of you.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And yourself. but you are free to go ahead and answer the ones that you are able to answer.
Okay, I'll just pick the last one because I think that is particularly important. So, which is why I said that I recognize that the CBN is trying to regulate this, and you'll see that during the course of the year, CBN has been doing quite a number of things to regulate several sectors. But I think that the most important thing that needs to be done first is to, first of all, mandate, enforce, the regulation that is already available, that banks must have their ATMs funded. Now, there is a challenge to this, which I imagine is why banks also consider it a huge risk, which is that sometimes remote areas, right, do not have as much security as you would find in urban areas. So if you go there and then you load cash, you sometimes have instances of people breaking into the ATM terminals to steal the money, right? But again, things can be done to fortify the process, right? Maybe have a security officer there, maybe use local people to protect the place and things like that. But that needs to be enforced, right? That if you have an ATM terminal somewhere, within X period of time, it must be funded, right? And then, of course, the one where you then peg what the commission is going to be at is also very important, because some places you find that some people are telling you that 100 naira for 3,000, 200 naira for 5,000, and then it just goes on and on and on and on. And it defeats the purpose at the end of the day. So yes, that's what I think. I think that first of all, the CBN needs to enforce the existing regulation that banks must have their ATMs funded, and maybe even go a step further and say that in X geographical area, across X kilometer or miles or something like that, you must have an ATM if you are functional in that environment. So that would also help, and then make sure it's funded. That would also help to ensure that there is more cash available without having to go to ATMs and POS. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Olushesi. I entirely agree with the suggestions that you have brought up. I just wanted to also add, of course, how has the Naira economics affected you in the context of the work that you do? I think it will be that particular question will be very, very good for our participants today, because we have them playing in diverse fields. It will be very interesting to hear how Naira economics is affecting each and every one of them. I'm also thinking, in addition to the suggestions that Mr. Olushesi has brought up, I'm also thinking the same way that the Central Bank of Nigeria enforces minimum deposits for you to remain as a bank. Probably it is time for government to introduce sanctions. Kind of the Banking Supervision Department of the Central Bank of Nigeria probably needs to begin to develop a basket of sanctions. For one, apps downtime, they call it, right? Because most of the time, leaving POS out of it, most of the time you try to do a transfer on your bank app. If they need to have 250 billion minimum deposit to continue to function as a bank, then they also need to have a minimum standard in their IT infrastructure, such that what do you call it? Cashless transactions are made possible, and without the headache that the Nigerian service consumer is currently facing. I think that this will be a great way, first, to improve national infrastructure, and then the banks also being enforced to strengthen their IT, is it infrastructure backbone, they call it now. Just my view.
Yes, thank you, sir.
These banks are deliberately leaving their ATMs in a state of dysfunction.
Right.
Allegedly, because the staff have POS machines. they make cash available for this POS merchant, that is their staff members, right?
Yeah.
Do you think this is the case? And if this is the case, are there ways we can approach this legally?
Yes. So I'm going to speak to what I know within my very, very, very limited knowledge. So I think that is very important to state. I've heard of allegations like this, right? And quite unfortunately as well, I've been in the banking hall, which I visit extremely less frequently. Probably visit a banking hall maybe like twice a year. But on one such rare visit, I have encountered where you find maybe conversations where not a banking staff now, but somebody from the outside discussing with a staff of the bank, who they have a relationship with, and then you find that when there is scarcity of cash, the POS agents always have cash, right? That is because most times these guys have to sort the people in the bank who provide this cash to them, and then who they in turn give something, as is usually used in the street parlance. So I think that is something that is ongoing. I'm not sure that is sanctioned by the bank. I can't speak to that. I imagine that would not be the case as well. But obviously, the bank then needs to strengthen its internal control measures to ensure that things like this are stymied and they are, first of all, ascertained, identified, and punished, so that you don't have people who legitimately need cash go to the bank and then they have to queue, and then you have a POS agent come into the bank, and the person can get a huge volume of cash out in one swoop, when you cannot. And I've also heard of such allegations where some banks also do not deliberately fund their ATM terminals because they have agreement with the people who are in front of the POS agents who are in front of them. Obviously, this will most likely not be sanctioned by the headquarters of the bank. Maybe an instance where the particular branch of the bank, or the people who are responsible for managing that particular branch may have some kind of scheme with the POS operators around that area that is making them, engage in such activities. But yes, it is left to the bank, first of all, to create processes that would identify these people and then have very strict consequences for such infractions, right? And then, of course, at the macro level, the CBN can then also implement measures to ensure that any bank that is found wanting will be adequately penalized. So I think that this will help to, check this particular activity. But that'll be my response to that.
One of the speakers is having challenges in Kenya and has sent an apology. Since we're still in the speaker session, I would suggest that I'm trying to pick the name now. Mr. or Miss Peretimi standing in for one of the speakers. Do you want to make either his presentation or share your opinion, and then we can then take the questions that are here. And of course, we welcome you to participate in addressing them to give a recognition to the effort being made by the speaker to join and the challenges that he is facing. I hope that is fair, since we are in a democracy.
Hi, good evening, sir. Yeah, this is Beretimi. This is Beretimi. Yes. Yeah, I'll be apologizing on behalf of my colleague Jibrin once again. He's caught up somewhere in Kenya, and I think he's having a lot of internet challenge, which is why he was unable to join this call. And I'll be standing in his stead today. I won't be making his presentation, but of course I will be contributing to the conversation. I think the last question that was, or before I go forward, maybe I should just introduce myself. So I'm a senior associate at ALEX, the Technology, Media and Telecommunications Practice Group. I think the last question that was asked, Mr. Tosin already addressed it, but I would just like to contribute to that. That in fact the laws actually recognize and places an obligation on the bank. I think he had mentioned that as well, to have cash available in the ATMs at all times. So if you go to an ATM, typically there should be cash available. Or as with every other technology, right? Sometimes there may be technical issues, which the CBN recognizes. But then again, directs that such technical issues shouldn't take beyond 72 hours. So if I go to an ATM beside my house or my office, and for 3 days consecutively, that ATM is not working, ordinarily, if I feel like, I guess I can then report to the CBN. But how many citizens have the, is it the strength or the time to want to take up those issues with the CBN? But the CBN itself also has an obligation to monitor these ATMs. In one of the guidelines, the electronic payment guidelines, the obligation on the CBN, so it says that it would monitor ATMs to ensure that there is cash. But really, how much of this monitoring is being done? Because I'm sure it's everyone. I can't remember the last time I was able to make a withdrawal of an ATM. It's been using money to buy money by using the POS. Yes, POS has been helpful, but then when these things go unchecked, because a lot of persons get to suffer for it. So that was just to address that question. And to speak generally to the topic, I'm just going to give a very brief summary of my input on that. So this issue, it's not even, it's not just a, how would I put it now, an expert related issue. I think this is something that is bothering and touching everyone. A couple of days ago, I was having a conversation with a client who had gotten a letter of credit from a bank. And at the time, I think what the bank had done was to make a payment on behalf of the client following the letter of credit. And dollar at that time was about $500 or $600. And the client was supposed to pay back that loan at that rate. But today, I think dollar is like 1,100. So what the legal head was speaking to me was, she was like, Pere, we're literally working to pay the bank. That's what we're doing right now. We're not making any profit. This business is not being profitable anymore. We're literally just working to pay the bank. So we can see how the quote unquote Naira economics is even affecting businesses. And like I think Tosin had also said, what these businesses will do is, as much as possible, push the burden down to the end consumers. It would affect them, but then it will still affect the consumers. So I may not have taken that loan from the bank or that letter of credit, but ultimately the business decision or whatever business decision is taken would roll down to me. Same with the cybersecurity levy that was initially issued by the CDM. I think the view we had taken was that cybersecurity levy was supposed to be for specific businesses and not every Nigerian, right? But even if that was the case, let's assume that the CBN or the federal government has ceded and said, okay, the cybersecurity levy is not for every Nigerian, it's for telecommunication companies, which is one of the companies that is listed under the Cybersecurity Act. What would just happen effectively when the telecommunication companies have to pay that kind of levy? Peretime would then have an extra charge, maybe data that I used to buy, I get 1 gig, assuming I get 1 gig for 1,000 Naira. I may not get 1 gig for 1,000 Naira anymore. The value of the data that I will get will then be reduced. Effectively, they'll have to push that burden down to the end, to the consumers. And there's only so much. Yes, I know that sometimes the regulators can say you can't push this burden, but in other ways, they would always find ways to remain in business. So if you don't push the burden down to the end consumers, then they either pack up. And we're seeing a number of businesses folding up, even shortly after getting very significant investments, because they can't keep up. It's like there is Naira devaluation. I've put money in this system. I'm not able to recoup the money I've put in the system, or I'm being taxed and levied beyond what I can afford, and there are additional levies up and up. I think there was even the expatriates employment levy that was supposed to be implemented, and that was also suspended. So we see these levies coming up, and then I guess where there is a pushback, then the government tries to retract. But typically what we would expect is you would have done an assessment, a due diligence internally before even putting out some of these policies as against, let's put one leg out, let's see how they take it. And if they don't take it very well, we take it back. If if they push back a bit or don't push back, then we let it ride. But it's very clear that the current situation is affecting everyone, businesses, individuals, in one way or the other. We're all very significantly affected with the current Naira situation in Nigeria. So that's just my little contribution to this. And I'm happy to, of course, contribute as we go ahead. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so very much. Okay, can Madam Bosun go ahead now? Please unmute yourself.
Yes. Good evening, Talking Trade. Good evening, Dr. Femi Boyede. Good evening, Lady K. You are welcome to our world. I think I heard you say you are in Nigeria. Welcome. And to all the speakers, I want to say a big thank you for a well thought out session. Now, for me, I will want to agree that one, the no cash on ATM is deliberate. Ask me why. I live in Bagada in Lagos. On my major road, that is just about 2 minutes away from me, we have 7 banks, different banks. And you will get there, none will have cash. And like it's been said, POS, people will have cash. So I want to say the thing is that, you see any good thing in Nigeria, you see the way Nigerians will circumvent it. I want to think that if you find out, if there's a real search into what is happening, you'll find out that most people in the banks are the people setting up those ATM people. And that's why they always have cash. Also, they too have devised a way. I was in one bank sometimes about 4 weeks ago on a race course, and a lady was withdrawing. We waited. I was watching this lady and she kept changing cards. And it just dawned on me and I'm like, come, are you a POS person? Because you have used over 4 cards here and I'm still waiting to collect just 10,000 for my transport. So she saw that I wasn't taking it lightly with her, so she stepped aside. So even when they load just very little amount to say, let my people go, then I think when it's either the security or people within the bank too that will call these guys to say, oh, we have just loaded the ATMs. And then everything would have vanished. I actually didn't want to talk before, but Talking Trade must keep going on. Because why I don't want to say anything is that it appears the more we talk, we just raise our stress level. It appears that somebody says, if you people like, when you keep talking, you're not go tire and you will keep quiet. And then we're the ones getting angry. And that's why I didn't want to talk. But like I said, Talking Trade must keep going on. And that's why I'm talking. Now, CBN in the last 1 year, I'll soon round up. CBN in the last 1 year have rolled out series of policies, backward and forwarding policies. CBN is supposed to make cash available for Nigerians through the banks. And when we are not getting it, who is being sanctioned, like has been said, because there are no consequences? There was once a time, and I want to suggest that there must be consequences for everyone who needed cash and had to go to POS to go and pay. I think such consequences should be the banks should pay that charge. There was a time about 3 years ago, or how many years, when banks were not giving loans out to businesses. The sanction is that for any bank that didn't give it out, they were penalizing them, and then they had to now keep begging people to come and take loans. So then too, another suggestion would be Nigeria should look at it that they are in government to make life easy for people. We need to see such policies that will make life easy for people. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. And you said Talking Trade must keep going on, and you don't want to talk. But you all equally said, okay, when we complained, then they retracted, right? We have heard this before. So obviously, it's not as if we are just talking to empty. What we say here goes a long way to help with the policy in the country. So keep talking, keep making the Talking Trade relevant. The next person is Ibrahim Aruna. Thank you. Ibrahim Aruna, for those who don't know him, is one of the wonderful team behind the Talking Trade. You have the floor, Ibrahim. And
Thank you.
anyone, whenever you are speaking and you see my picture coming up next to yours, that means please round up. Okay. Thank you.
All right. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I want to commend all the speakers for doing a great job. I wanted to touch on two things: the POS and also the cybersecurity. And I want to give an example. I know whenever I go to Nigeria, for instance, in February I was there for almost a month, and I could experience what everybody's experiencing. But I think looking at the global standard, right? In Canada, for instance, you have POS. The banks have POS. If you want to withdraw money, there's always cash available, and they have different charges. Sometimes you withdraw through your bank, you're not going to pay any charges. But if you're in a place where your bank is not available, you want to use another bank's POS, then you will pay a little bit more. Or if the merchants or business area that have, most of them have different banks POS, and you want to withdraw, say the bank charges $1.5, the merchant can add additional $1.5, which would be $3 per withdrawal, right? But when you look at Nigeria, that's not the case. So I think we need to look to that law. Also, when you look at the environment in Nigeria where people are standing, that will also create opportunity for armed robbers or people to actually be able to attack and actually steal people's money. So security is not there. You can just walk anywhere and you see POS sitting everywhere and you will see them. So I think that has to be, the CBN has to make sure the regulation is being implemented properly. And maybe we revisit it. So that way, if somebody is going to be licensed to own a POS, they have to be in a very safe environment. And also the banks, there has to be constant visit to all those POS to ensure that they have money. If they don't have, they need to punish them. They have to make sure because there has to be a fine for not living to expectation, right? The regulations have to actually to fine those banks, which is going to be a lot of money. Let's go to cybersecurity. When I saw that release, I was laughing because why would I pay anyone and the money goes to the government for protecting me? So what happened to all the money the bank is making or any business, right? The roles of the government is to provide guidance, is to provide advice, is to provide regulations. So why should government start milking individual because they want to protect us, right? It shouldn't be. So we need to ensure the banks need to protect individual, and if they lack in doing that, they need to punish them for that. They need to invoke the regulation and they have to pay fine. That's my simple contribution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so very much, Dr. Malara. Please, Dr. Shaw. And after that,
thank you, Lady K. And I want to say that everything that has been said are very correct. What I would suggest, we need solution, because central bank meant well. They started with RTGS, but they did not have enough infrastructure with the policy of what they call payment banking system, which generated POS and all that. They don't have attached rules and regulations to monitor the banks themselves and the POS owners. Those who own the POS, a lot of them are the bankers. It's like the bureau de change situation. A lot of central bankers were opening BDC, and so we had the problem in the BDC. This time around, the infrastructure to run the POS, the payment banking system, which is the financial inclusion, was not there. The infrastructure was not there. They just threw the policy out, and the smart boys in the banks just took over. They are the owners of the POS. And so the corruption is so enormous. I don't know where they will start to clean the stable. They need to do a review of that policy And MFLA refused to listen to people like us. So we have this problem in our hands. I don't know what they should do, but they need a review. And okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That's my contribution.
Okay, so we have Adamu Kambo. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Lady K.
Thank you.
Good evening, our President Femi Boyede once again. Though I would like to speak personally on these issues on personal ground, to look at the POS, the cyber levy, and the multi-tax that the first speakers spoke about. Now, I had all the conversations. It seems we are looking at this POS of 18 from the city's perspective, but we are not looking at it from the on-bank or underbank communities around us. Now, if you look at places like, let me give you an instance, like in Kano, more than 50% of the local government areas in Kano, they don't have even a bank. Now, how do you service these communities financially? Banks, obviously, they cannot open account in any or all over the place. We all know even energy costs and some other associated costs, levies and charges, as we have been talking about, are there. We look at it, one of the easiest ways in which we can reach out to such remote communities where some sort of commercial activities are happening, even if it is a weekly market or some other economic communities, let me put it that way, they need to be served. Now, who is going to serve them? And then at what cost, at whose instance? Of course, whoever rendered that service must have incurred some sort of cost. Maybe getting the cash from the banks, maybe nearest to them, to that commercial hub where they are going to serve. So that is one area that I would like us to look at. And then, yes, CBN is making a move, which we maybe we are debating on to regulate this POS of a thing. But I would like us also look at who is generating cash. Obviously, banks are not generating cash. Banks are not printing cash. And then who is getting the cash? Where are these cash being gotten? Now, one other thing that maybe we didn't look or we didn't see, but I don't know whether it is peculiar in some places. You see, major shops or business owners whose business generated cash, most of them, they venture into this POS already. So it's a kind of a chain. They generate the cash and then they dispense at a cost. So that is one area also we need to understand, so that in the course of our discussions, let us balance these discussions and then do justice. This is going to then enable us to have an informed decision or suggestion or recommendation that we are going to make out of this meeting. And then when we talk about cash, I think one of my sisters in this call made mention about multiple policies being brought out by the CBN. Don't forget, some few months ago, we were discussing about a cashless society. Now, if really you want to mature into a cashless society, what brought cash? Some initiatives were made, like the Naira. Obviously, that is one of the best initiatives that has ever been done to address issues of this cashless of it. And then people started imbibing that. Suddenly, how it stopped, maybe is something that maybe we may listen to CBN for further explanations. So, and then on the same financial inclusion that we have been discussing about, it has some effect or impact in the cost or in the running of our communities or societies. Now, aside Lagos and some other few states, if we look at the statistics, financial inclusion in most of the states is less than 50%. We have states with financial inclusion of only 27 or 25%. Now, what do we do? Should we run a community or a society with financial illiteracy? The answer is no, because it is going to breed corruption and other economic or financial vices. Now, this initiative of financial inclusion is a good one. But in as much as our rural communities want to imbibe that financial inclusion of it, this cyber levy is going to hamper that policy, obviously. Because how much are they making in the rural places? What is this charges for? So rather than maybe opening or having a bank account, they would rather keep their cash or their money on the ground. So we can see that this is a question that we need to look at several policies, several things that are being initiated so that at the end of it all, let's have a balanced discussion on this issue. We see a scenario in which people start coming in and then they started being charged. Like this levy, assume it has started. Obviously, only God knows. Rather than having a kind of progress in the financial inclusion, we are going to have a reverse of it. Because most of these communities, they will opt out. Because I can generate only, let's say, 500 Naira in a day. Then I have to be charged because this thing is coming through electronically. So this is one area that token trade, we need to look at it. And then fellow members in this call, let's look at it so that we have a balance. When you talk of POS operating in Lagos, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. Because I least expect somebody in Lagos to be transacting with cash. You have your ATM, we have various payment systems that you can adopt. But go down to our rural communities. Yes, because there are no banks. There are nothing. If cash is being mentioned in that place, somebody can understand. And then we are trying to grow. Obviously, Nigeria is growing. Now, if really we need an economic growth, then we need to go back into that cashless of it. And then the Naira and other initiatives need to come in this. So this is the way I want us to look at it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You have made a lot of contributions. You know, you made so many points that we might not even touch on. Thank you so very much. Okay, do we have any other speaker for now? Someone else you have a question, you have a contribution, we are rounding up.
Okay, frozen.
Okay, but can you hear me now? Is it okay now?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, I was asking if there was any other person that has any other contribution or any questions. We are about rounding up now. It's almost
yes. Yes, before you take the next contribution, or if somebody else is raising their hands, I just wanted to assure, I can't remember, is it Madam Gambo that talked about no, I think it's Madam Bosuncho Lari. I just wanted to assure you, it will surprise you that we're actually being heard and our recommendations are being adopted. I can list at least 3 outcomes of our talking trade discussions here, especially the session where we did speaking truth to power. I can tell you about 2 or 3 of those policy recommendations that government immediately adopted hook, line, and sinker. So your voices are not just going into the air, they get into the right ears also. And I wanted to talk about just a quick comment about the unbanked communities. There is a technical description with the Federal Ministry of Finance and Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment of economically disadvantaged communities. I believe that we need to draw the attention of the Central Bank of Nigeria, especially the Banking Supervision Department, again, I don't know if I'm correct, Dr. Akonji can advise us on this. So either they are going to entrench or deepen community banking, or this is a special group of people, more or less like an endangered species. I think the country also needs to start thinking of technical solutions to address those issues. Then finally, I want to say that I think I have had it here and I've had it on several of our previous webinars. Government rolls out policies without consulting without engaging with the people that will either enjoy or suffer these policies. I think we need to amplify again the recommendation, the need for continuous engagement with relevant stakeholders, especially before introducing and implementing or enforcing policies that just come out, sometimes of the textbooks, or sometimes of the head or two or three people who think, no, this one shouldn't be, let us change it. Thank you, Lady K. Over to you.
Thank you so very much, everybody. Ibrahim Haruna, you want to say something? Okay, please, Tomini, share the script. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I just want to talk about one of the points Alhaji Aminu Gambo made in terms of the areas in the north where there are no banks available or even POS, right? And he also mentioned about dispensing cash at a cost. Yes, every business will want to make money, right? Nobody wants to run a business without making money, but there has to be a regulation. You know, in Nigeria, you want to withdraw money. These POS people just tell you this is how much they're going to charge you, and you have no choice, right? You will be compelled to give them that money and get your cash because you need that cash, right? But there has to be a regulation where there has to be a limit in which anyone can charge, right? We need to know, right? Somebody will not just say bring 300 for so amount, which is too much. So I think that's the other thing we need to add to our conversation. And government need to look into that. Is CBN regulation has to make sure they compel. We need to know how the minimum charges the POS can charge. And if they charge more than that, there has to be a punishment for that as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I think it's been a wonderful set of conversations here. I just hope that, you know, as we keep having these conversations, in some way, you know, government actually listens and then implements some of these things. Because at the end of the day, if you want to ease doing business in the country, these are some of the important factors that need to be considered, so that people are not scared from doing business, and people are not also unnecessarily belabored, you know, by policies of the government. So thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Great having you. Looking forward to having you more. Okay, any other person among our speakers, contributors? Last word?
Yeah. So I'll just say that, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for a very enlightening session. And Alhaji Adamu, thank you very much. Yes, I think the contributions he made was very significant in terms of the POS and the role that it's supposed to play. So in a state like Lagos, where we're having these issues, we shouldn't even be having it because POS is beneficial, but then it's being abused here. But what I'll just say is implementation. For the most part, Nigeria does have a lot of laws, and most of the issues that have been raised here, or if I go to the POS or to the ATM and there is no cash, can these banks be sanctioned for not having cash? Yes, there's a law that says that they can be sanctioned, but who is implementing it? How or what are the steps that the regulators who are in charge are taking to enforce these laws and to implement it. So it's good to have conversations like this. We cannot all individually report some of these issues as they occur. But then when we come together like this, and I'm sure if it gets to the right policymakers and regulators, they could take it up. So like Sir Olufemi had said, I think at the last conversation, issues were raised and a couple of them have been addressed. So it won't be surprising if by the next time we have a session like this, we're hearing that CBN officials have been taking steps, or maybe some of us have even seen them at some ATMs enforcing or ensuring that there is cash there, because that's an obligation that they have, and it will be very, that'll be very helpful. We can't do it individually, so we expect that some of these issues are addressed from the regulatory point of view. Thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, on this note, I just want to say a very big thank you. First to Business Day Media for being true to the partnership and going out of their way to continue to propose and well, support will be the appropriate word there. Of course, I know Lady K will still mention you guys one by one, but I want to, on a general note, thank every member of the technical team. I want to appreciate the speakers, Mr. Oluseyi, who was here in person, Mrs. Peretimi Akimodun, who at short notice agreed to represent her partner, Mr. Jibrin, who has been having problems in Kenya. While this session was going on, the speaker from PwC, we got a word that he actually also had technical challenges and sent somebody. I had put on the chat box, but maybe that person joined with another name. But we acknowledge the apology in absentia, and more importantly, we couldn't have had this conversation talking to ourselves. I mean, by us, I mean the organizers, TATRIG and Business Day, we wouldn't have just been talking to ourselves. So this has been all thanks to all of you who set aside time to join us today. And I want to encourage you not to be daunted, not to allow your hope in Nigeria to wane, because under the current administration, it does take it takes patience, it takes commitment, it takes doggedness, and it takes sacrifice for us to get there. But without being a spokesperson of the federal government of Nigeria, we cannot close our eyes to the pockets of progress that is being made. Of course, the pain, some of them come with pains, but if hopefully we have in the right policies, we have sustained implementation, we definitely will see a better Nigeria. And in those policies that are not so right, by continuing to talk and get listened to, which we are committed to doing, we will not be deterred. We will continue to do this. And as we go along, we believe that your voices will make the difference. Again, I want to say thank you to everyone who has participated today. And until we come your way next time, I hand over to Lady K to do the final ceremonies. Thank you. See you next time.